I put my phone face down on the kitchen counter and told myself I wasn't going to check it again. That was 4 years ago. I haven't spoken to my best friend since. Let me back up. My name is Harlan. I'm 34 years old. I grew up in Sudbury, Ontario, which is the kind of place where everyone knows your family's problems, and your family's problems. My dad worked the mines for 30 years. My mom taught grade school. We weren't rich, but we had enough, and we had each other, and for a long time I thought that was everything. I met Christoph when we were 7. He moved in 2 houses down from us in the fall, his family arriving from Winnipeg with a moving truck and a dog that immediately dug up my mom's garden. She forgave the dog. She always liked Christoph. Everyone liked Christoph. He had the kind of easy charm that made adults trust him, and made other kids want to follow him around. I wasn't following him. We just happened to be going the same direction for about 27 years. He was at my hockey games. I was at his parents' anniversary party, when his dad had too much rye, and cried about the Montreal Canadiens. When my grandfather died in 2014, and I didn't know what to do with myself, Christoph drove up from Toronto. 4 hours each way. Just to sit with me at the funeral home and not say anything, because he understood that sometimes there's nothing to say. That's the kind of friend he was. Or I thought he was. I moved to Toronto in 2015 for work. Engineering firm, decent pay, long hours. Christoph was already there. He was doing sales for a tech company, the kind that always sounds like it's about to be acquired by someone bigger. We saw each other most weekends. We had a group, a loose collection of people from various parts of our lives, who had all ended up in the city at the same time. But Christoph and I were the core of it. I met my wife through that group. Her name was Jade, and she was a nurse at St. Michael's, and she laughed like she meant it. We dated for 2 years, got engaged in the fall of 2019 at a place called Elora Gorge that she'd always wanted to visit. Christoph was my best man. He gave a speech at the engagement dinner that made her cry and made her mother hug him like he was her own son. We got married in August of 2020, which tells you something about the kind of year that was. Small ceremony. 20 people on a property near Caledon that belonged to her aunt. Christoph stood beside me at the front and handed me the ring when it was time. The first 2 years of marriage were fine. Good even. We bought a condo in the East End, Leslieville, near the park, with a down payment that took us years to save. Jade was working nights times which hard, but we figured it out. We were figuring it out. I thought we were figuring it out. Christoph came over most Sunday afternoons. He and Jade got along well. They had the same taste in terrible reality television and argued about hockey with the kind of passion that meant neither of them actually cared who won. He was just part of our life. Part of our couch, our kitchen, our fridge that he'd open without asking. I should have noticed earlier. I know that now. But I want to be clear about something. I was not naive. I was not oblivious. I was trusting, and I think there's a difference. I chose to trust 2 people who had given me no reason not to. That was not a failure of my judgment. That was just what I was doing when people I loved decided to do something I never would have. I found out on a Tuesday in March. Jade wasn't home when I got back from work. That wasn't unusual. Her shifts were irregular, and she sometimes stopped at her parents' place in Scarborough after. I texted her. She responded. One of those quick casual texts that doesn't say anything specific, just enough to let you know the person is alive. I made dinner, ate alone, watched something on my laptop. Normal Tuesday. She got home around 10. I was already half asleep. She came in quietly, which she usually did after late shifts, and I didn't think anything of it. The next morning I got up before her, made coffee, and noticed her jacket was on the wrong hook by the door. This is going to sound like nothing. It was nothing. But she had this specific way of hanging things up, always the same hook, and something about seeing it on the other one made me look twice. Not suspicious twice, just a second take. A tiny hiccup in pattern that didn't mean anything. I went to work. I came home. And that evening she sat down across from me at the kitchen table, and told me she was pregnant. I want to describe what my face did in that moment. But, I honestly don't know. I felt something shift behind my eyes, like a wall coming loose from the inside, but I kept my face together enough to say how far along. 8 weeks, she said. I did the math. 8 weeks back. That was January. In January I was in Edmonton for 3 weeks on a project, 3 full weeks. Jade had stayed in Toronto. She'd mentioned she was tired, that she'd been spending time with her sister, that she'd caught a cold that went around the hospital floor. I said nothing for a very long time. She was crying. She said she was sorry. She said it just happened. Which I want to pause on, because things don't just happen. Things happen because people make choices, and then they keep making choices, and at some point the only true thing you can say is that you chose this, every step of the way. I asked her one question. 1. Who? And the way her face moved when I asked it told me the answer before she even opened her mouth. She said his name. I heard it, and I sat with it for about 3 seconds, and then I stood up, got my coat, my wallet, my keys and my phone, and I walked out of my own condo. I drove to a hotel on King Street. I checked in. I sat on the edge of the bed and I did not call anyone. I did not text anyone. I just sat there in a clean, quiet room that smelled like nothing, and I let the thing I had just learned become real inside my head. Christoph called me 6 times that night. I watched his name appear on my screen 6 times. I didn't pick up once. The next morning I called a lawyer before I called anyone else. Her name was Dr. Renata Soares, and she specialized in family law. She'd been recommended to me 2 years earlier by a guy at work who'd been through a rough divorce, and I'd filed her card without ever thinking I'd need it. I called her at 8:15 a.m. from the hotel room. She was calm, practical, and precise. She asked questions, I answered them. She explained what my options were under Ontario family law, what my rights were with respect to the condo. We'd owned it jointly, though the down payment had come primarily from my savings, and what the process would look like. I asked about timeline. She told me. I asked about worst-case scenarios. She told me those too. By the end of the conversation I had a clear picture of what the next 6 months were going to look like, at least legally. I told her to start the paperwork. Jade called while I was on the phone with the lawyer. I let it go to voicemail. She called again an hour later. Again, I let them all go. That afternoon I went back to the condo when I knew she was at work. I packed 2 large duffel bags. Clothes, documents, my grandfather's watch, my laptop. The external hard drive where I kept everything important. I took the financial documents from the folder, in the second kitchen drawer. The one we both knew about. I photographed everything. I transferred my half of the shared account to my personal account, which was legally mine to do. I was not taking anything that wasn't mine. I was simply ensuring that what was mine stayed mine. I moved into a short-term rental in Midtown that same afternoon. Furnished. Month to month. I set it up through an app, paid with my credit card, gave no forwarding address. That night I blocked Jade's number. I blocked Christoph's number. I blocked every social media account he had, every platform, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I didn't post anything. I didn't announce anything. I just quietly made myself unavailable. The next morning, I called my phone provider and changed my number. The new one went to exactly 4 people. My boss, my lawyer, my sister in Sault Ste. Marie, and a colleague I trusted completely. Nobody else. My sister Margot called me within 20 minutes of getting the new number. I heard, she said. From who? Christoph called Mom. I went very quiet. She didn't tell him anything, Margot said quickly. She hung up on him. She's furious. Good. There was a pause. Harlan, are you okay? I'm fine. I need you to tell Mom not to pass my contact information to anyone. Not to anyone who asks, can you do that? Of course. But what are you going to do? I'm going to get divorced. She went quiet for a moment. Then she said, okay, tell me what you need. I told her. She did exactly what I asked. That's what good people do. I should tell you about the mutual friends. Because that part is its own thing entirely. Our group. The loose collection I mentioned, maybe 12 people in total, started reaching out within a week. Some of them didn't know what had happened. Or said they didn't. Some of them clearly did. The messages ranged from genuinely concerned to suspiciously neutral to, in one case, an actual request that I just hear Christoph out. I read that last one twice. Then I deleted the thread and removed that person from my contacts. I wasn't angry at most of them. I understood. Christoph was charming, magnetic, the kind of person who makes people feel like the most important person in the room when he's talking to them. He'd had 27 years to build relationships with everyone who knew me. Of course some of them were going to side with him. That wasn't betrayal. Exactly. That was just people doing what people do when they're caught between 2 versions of a story. But I also noticed, very carefully, who reached out simply to check on me without mentioning him at all. There were 4 of those people. I kept those 4. The rest, I let go slowly, without drama, the way you let go of a rope when you've already made it to the other side. The divorce took 11 months. Ontario's no-fault divorce system means the legal process is less theatrical than people expect. It's paperwork. It's disclosure forms and financial statements and property equalization calculations. My lawyer was thorough. The condo was our biggest shared asset, and because we'd owned it jointly, the equity was split, despite the fact that my down payment had been larger. Something my lawyer pursued aggressively and recovered a portion of, through an equalization adjustment. I won't get into all the numbers. What I'll say is that I came out of it with enough to put towards something new. And I knew how to handle money better than Jade did. And I didn't make any decisions while I was emotional. I did not attend a single meeting that Jade requested. My lawyer attended those. I did not read Christoph's letter. Yes, he sent one, actual paper, to my work address which he apparently got from someone in the group. My assistant brought it in. I told her to shred it. 6 months into the process I transferred within my company to the Calgary office. I didn't announce this. I didn't make a going away event. I gave notice to the Midtown rental, packed what I had, drove to Calgary over 4 days because I wanted to see the country, and started over. The only people in Toronto who knew where I'd gone were the 4 I'd kept. I asked each of them explicitly not to share that information. All four agreed. All four kept their word. I should mention one specific conversation, because it captures something important. About 8 months after I left Toronto, one of the four, a woman named Petra, who'd been Jade's work friend originally but had become genuinely mine over the years, told me that Jade had reached out to her asking if she knew how to contact me. "What did you say?" I asked. "I said I hadn't heard from you." "Thank you." She seemed surprised. Petra said. "Like she expected me to try to convince you to talk to her." "What gave her that impression?" "I think she's used to people thinking she deserves another chance." That was the entirety of that conversation. I didn't dwell on it. I moved on. Calgary suited me. The city is different from Toronto, bigger skies, more space between things, a pace that doesn't feel like everyone is racing towards something they can't name. I rented an apartment in Kensington. Got a dog, a 3-year-old shepherd mix I named Birch, who immediately became the best thing in my daily life, and settled into the new office. The work was good. I was good at it. I'd always been good at it, but in Toronto I'd let work become the background of a life that was mostly about other people. In Calgary, work became the foreground for a while, and I let it, because I needed something to fill the space while I rebuilt. The divorce finalized in February. My lawyer called me on a Thursday morning to confirm. I thanked her, put my phone in my pocket, took Birch to the river pathway, and we walked for 2 hours in the cold. There's a thing that happens when something is officially over, that you've already been treating as over for months. It's less like relief and more like a door locking from the inside. Quiet. Clean. Final. I didn't hear from Christoph again for almost 2 years. He found me through LinkedIn, which I had eventually rebuilt under my full name. Harlan Ashworth, for professional reasons. The message was long. I'll summarize it. He said he was sorry, that it had started after Jade's hospital Christmas party in December, and he'd been struggling with feelings for a while. That he never meant for things to go the way they did. That he missed me. That he thought about calling every week. That he hoped I'd found some peace. I read it once, closed the tab, did not respond. 2 days later, a message from Jade through the same platform. Shorter. She'd had the baby, a girl. She said she wasn't asking for anything. She just thought I should know. I sat with that for a minute. Not because it changed anything. Because something about it made me feel the specific quiet sadness of looking at a photograph of a place you used to know. Not grief, exactly. Just the recognition that something that once existed doesn't exist anymore. And that's true whether you're the one who left or the one who was left. I typed no response. I closed the laptop. I took Birch out for his evening walk. The air was cold and sharp and smelled like winter in the way that Alberta does, which is different from Ontario. Drier, more absolute. Birch ran ahead, stopped, looked back at me like he was checking I was still there. I was still there. I kept walking. There's a woman I've been seeing for about 8 months. Her name is Tova, and she's a structural engineer who grew up in Lethbridge. She's warm and direct and laughs at things that are actually funny. She knows about what happened. I told her on our third date, matter-of-factly without drama, and she listened without trying to process it for me, or tell me what she thought it meant. She just said, "That sounds like it was a lot to carry," and moved on. Which was exactly the right thing to say. We haven't made any big declarations about the future. That's okay. I've learned that you don't have to know what the future looks like to know that it exists. And that you're walking toward it. About a month ago, I got a message from the one person in the old group I hadn't expected to hear from. A guy named Walsh who'd been Christoph's friend first, not mine, and who I'd always been slightly lukewarm about. He'd apparently fallen out with Christoph over something. He didn't go into detail. He just said he wanted to say that he thought I'd handled everything the right way, and that he was sorry for not reaching out sooner. I thanked him. I kept it short. I didn't reopen the door all the way, but I left it slightly ajar. Because I've learned that holding grudges against peripheral people takes energy that's better spent elsewhere. I don't spend time thinking about Christoph anymore. That's not a performance of recovery. I'm not trying to seem healed. It's just that when you remove someone completely, and you build something new in the space they occupied, eventually the new thing is bigger than the absence. That's what happened. The absence got smaller. The life got larger. Birch started taking up most of the couch. Tova came over most weekends. I got promoted last fall. I call my mom on Sundays. I went back to Sudbury for Christmas and stood in my parents' kitchen, eating my mother's tortilla and thought, I came from good people, and I am, still one. And nothing that happened changed either of those things. I used to think that cutting someone off completely was an extreme response. I don't think that anymore. I think it's simply the correct response to certain situations. Not all situations. I'm not advocating for burning every relationship at the first sign of difficulty, but there are moments when someone shows you, very clearly, exactly what you mean to them. And in those moments, the most honest thing you can do is believe them. I believed them, and then I left. I took Birch everywhere that first year. He was steadier than most people I'd known, and asked for less than all of them. And on the nights when the apartment felt very quiet, he would come and put his head on my knee with this specific expression that I can only describe as knowing. Dogs are like that, I think. They don't need you to explain anything. They just sit with you until things are better. Things are better. That's the whole story. That's it.